this episode, we are full on spoilers for both the novel and the film.
I'm Max.
Hi, I'm Bill, also known as Matt Stagger, and welcome to What the Adaptation, where we take material from one medium and check it out in another medium and see how they mesh. Tonight, we're going to be doing Dr. Sleep, book by Stephen King. And joining us, we have Lady Kathryn. Welcome back.
Glad to be back. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I know you're a big King fan, much like myself.
Great taste.
Thank you. So, Max, you want to give us the bona fides?
Well, obviously, this is Dr. Sleep. It follows the adult Danny as he encounters a young girl and a cult known the True Knot. It was directed and written by Mike Flanagan. He's written and directed several shows for Netflix, including specifically for Netflix, Gerald's Game, The Haunting of Hill House, Midnight Mass, The Midnight Club, and The Fall of the House of sorry, I'm mixing that up. Sorry, it's a funny title. The Fall of the House of Usher. Definitely got some stuff on his resume. Everything's kind of in, for IMDb around that 7 range, but that's kind of typical for horror. Anyone that's ever looked at horror, they never rate in the 10s almost ever.
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs, I think, is an exception if you want to count that as horror.
He's probably a pretty good fit for the show, given the context.
Yeah, I think he was handed a really hard job. You're doing a sequel to The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Irregardless of what King wrote in the book, you have to address the Kubrick in the room because everybody knows Kubrick's The Shining. So he had to find a way to sort of marry Kubrick's The Shining with King's The Shining, which were two pretty different things. And I do know for a fact he went to King himself with the screenplay and asked him, how do I do this? Is it okay if we do it this way? Because, even King recognizes, yes, I prefer my Shining, but Kubrick's is so well known. You can't do a sequel without addressing it. So yeah. I think it was a very hard job to adapt the Stephen King novel and include Kubrick, because the novel does not include anything from Kubrick's version.
No. He has to marry the two different stories together to make a future out of it somehow. And that was a tough call for him. A lot of the things that he had to do.
I mean, the first time I read the book, I'm like, okay, how are they, if they ever make a movie of this, how are they going to handle Dick Halloran? Because he's dead in the Kubrick version, but he's totally alive in the book.
Right. Or just the building itself then, too.
Well, yeah. I mean, one freezes over and the other explodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's fundamental changes that were made to the source material to fit Kubrick's with King's. I think we get the spirit of King's book in this movie.
There was a lot of quotes from the book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you get a lot of dialogue. The ending is very different than the book. Very different. So...
Well, I'd have things to talk about that, but
yeah,
that's for later. Yeah. It does bring us to our first question of the night. What was changed from the source material, and did those changes impact your enjoyment of the film?
Well, pack a lunch. We're going to be here a while.
Get the popcorn.
I mean, the changes are huge. He's actually got food. Nice. Let's start with the dead obvious that Danny doesn't die in the book. Billy doesn't die in the book. So, our main two losses we have in the movie. Well, and Abra's dad doesn't die.
Well,
so
I was just going to mention losses
we have.
I was going to say, doesn't the father not die?
No.
How about the doctor?
And the doctor really is just in the at the AA meeting, finds his watch, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it. He's really not as significant in
Right.
the as he is in the book, because he's got a main part to bring the parents and Dan together.
Yeah.
I
Not to
without him,
mention
it made it awkward.
he's Dan's AA sponsor, so it's huge.
Yeah. They just kind of flipped him out. And I understand with time, but then I think some of the things that were put in there didn't need the time that they needed, where they could have told a better story on certain things, like had the characters that were vital in it
Mm.
than some of the other things. I do, I think it was rushed, and the characters that were missed. That's what I feel.
I felt like the True Knot was like really shrunk down. Like we
It
saw all these
was, yeah.
RVs, and like we saw all those things, and like then we saw like 5 people. Like the hell? It felt like they had more. Felt like they had more vehicles than people, and it didn't make sense.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. It's just, I get why they did what they did, but at the same time, they could have made them seem like there was more of them.
Mhm.
Particularly the baseball boy scene, which is horrific to watch, by the way.
Hmm.
That
They
scene
did a
is,
great job with it. They did a
yeah,
great job.
it was brutal. But
Yeah.
you know, they have a group of like 8, 9 people, as opposed to, you know, it's supposed to be what, 15,
40.
16 people that are, you know, there for that moment.
Mhm.
And we know there's more because they have an entire lodge worth of people.
Mhm.
So I
mean, there's a-
agree that the True Knot does feel sunk down.
Yeah.
They did, however, nail Rose the Hat. Awesome. Did one of the best villains
I
King's
did
written
like
in a
her.
long time.
The only thing I didn't like is that her brogue would come in and out. Her accent would be there, and then it wouldn't be there, and it would be there. You know how sometimes when they're trying, you know, they will remember that they're supposed to be speaking with this accent, and then after the show they aren't. So some of the time she had a brogue, some of the time she didn't. That's the only thing that bothered me about her. But other than that, she was great.
See, I noticed that and I liked it because for somebody who's that old, you know, centuries upon centuries old, you know, who's spoken probably 50 different languages, slipping in and out of certain accents. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, it kind of works for the character, so I'm not mad about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
I see where you come. Yeah, I totally understand where you
Yeah.
come from.
You know, when I was reading the book, the one guy that cycled in the movie, at first is like, that's not what happened. And I got later like, oh yeah, it's a different guy that cycles later. Because they had mentioned like one guy just died in his sleep.
Yeah.
And then later they start cycling, and it felt like there are 2 different types of death going on. Almost.
Well, the implication I got was the guy who died in his sleep was probably cycling and nobody was around.
Mm-hmm. I did notice if like he had a body left over or not, or if it was just his clothes when he died.
Close.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the
So
cycling, the only thing that bothered me, because the group was so small, they had not built up the community as well. So when Gramps cycled out,
Grandpa Flick, yeah.
yeah, they all went and got his steam, and that just seemed like morbid, instead of, this isn't something you do with family. You know what I mean? I thought they were supposed to be, though in the book, they were more of a core group, and they're bigger, but there was more of a core group. They respected, because if they run out of steam, they could just kill each other if they needed to, if that's the way they're going to act.
Well, they were starving. And I think that's what that was to imply.
Yeah.
That the fact that they were literally on the point of starving when it came
Yep.
to steam.
If anything,
And
I'd think that they didn't show that they were starving enough at that point in the movie to like really highlight that. I know she was like down to like the last canisters and maybe hiding a few in the movie,
yeah.
but they weren't really showing how bad they were running out of steam in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't touch on the links they would go to, like going down to, a
Yeah.
famous cartel city in Mexico, so
Yeah.
they could literally just feed off the misery of everybody in that city.
Mm-hmm.
Or tornadoes or hurricanes or natural
Yeah.
disasters. Yeah.
And they weren't talking about all the other kids they found over the years and how it was like getting less and less as
Yeah, how
much.
the steam or the shine, if you prefer,
Yeah.
it's getting weaker and weaker.
Because they kind of mentioned that a little bit, but I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. They could have emphasized that more, I
Yeah.
think. With some simple dialogue and a little bit of makeup. Send them out a
And,
little bit.
and
Well, I
then
don't
of
think-
course, latter half of the book they mentioned what was it, measles?
Mhm.
Was it?
Yeah, their immune systems, most of these people were from, time long ago, and they haven't had a whole lot of exposure to, the normal bugs and viruses that we deal with on a regular basis. And, the one guy who died, he basically got the measles and just died.
Yeah, a couple of them died from that. They weren't vaccinated. They got it from the baseball kid.
Yep.
Doesn't that affect nervous system too?
The brain. Yeah.
Because they mentioned that there was a whole issue of them flying and it affects their nervous system. And they're susceptible to nervous system issues.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't put those two together, but yeah, you're 100% right. But yeah, I mean, they changed the familiar relationship between Dan and Abra. That reveal we find out in the book. We're like, oh, they actually are related to each other.
Yep.
And those little clues, like her rubbing her mouth in that particular way. As somebody who's read The Shining, you're
Like the dad.
Didn't Jack used to do that when he was particularly drunk or angry? That whole thing, and you're like, oh my god.
The problem with not having them being as familiar or related and not having the doctor in on it is, if I've got a 12 or 13-year-old daughter and some guy, I mean, I would not let my daughter go with she'd be locked in a room. It was not happening. I don't care what crazy things or what is going on. The doctor had, okay, this is this, could talk to them in a manner that gave them more comfort, understood where he's coming from. They knew the family, but to have a stranger, and when he first showed up in town, he was looking rough.
Well, yeah.
Then to put your child's into their care, it's just it's not feasible.
I think they handled that pretty okay in the movie. I mean, Abra's dad comes charging out of that house and goes after Dan for contacting his daughter. He's like, she's 13, and he just straight up goes after him. And that's when Dan's like, you were supposed to show him.
Right, but he still let her go after that. I mean, kind of thing.
No, he didn't.
Just
she stayed with him. She was with her father.
In the book.
No, in the movie.
Yep.
She stayed with her father. It was a trick. It was her rabbit that Dan took with him that looked like Abra, because she was projecting herself onto the rabbit.
Yeah.
Okay, so she wasn't there in the thing. Okay.
Yeah, she wasn't there at all. She was with her dad. Fro took her from her dad's house, and that's when he killed her dad in the movie.
Yep. Which was similar because they used a mannequin in the books.
Actually, they used the mannequin trick twice, because they use it at the end in the book as well. Him and Billy. I think they did a really good job, given the hard tasks they were given. It's one of my favorite adaptations, even though it is very different. So even the ones that, I don't necessarily think were necessary, I still enjoyed, and I'm not really angry about it. I think it ended up being a really entertaining movie, and it got the spirit of King's book across, but don't get me wrong, the book is better.
I thought when it started, I thought they started out amazing. they started off with that little girl Violet in
Yeah.
the group. And when they started off with the flashbacks of the hotel, I thought that was great. They were just on a level. But then when Hallerman turned out not to really be there, then it just sort of seemed to take a skip. And then they jumped to, of course, his age. He aged like 20 years after that. But it just seemed they were going so good. It was just like, oh, this is perfect. And then it just sort of went downhill a little bit for me at that point.
Yeah, they kind of had to. I mean, a lot of people who love The Shining, the movie, would absolutely come into that and be like, wait a minute, how is he sitting there talking to him alive? And it's going to cause, a lot of issues, especially with online stuff. The complaints would have been never ending. So I can see where they're like, well, we'll have to make him a ghost because he did die in the movie.
But it does work even within the context of Dr. Sleep, because they do maintain ghost form for however many years.
Right. And he does come back later, even in the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For several decades.
But I love the whole fact that it hurts for him to be there. And he makes that clear. He's like, yeah, I can't talk long. It hurts to be here. And I'm like, ooh, there's a nice little detail that, maybe for some of the bad people, it doesn't hurt. Like, some of the ghosts from The Shining, they don't appear to be in pain so much as hunger.
Well, that's because they're feeding.
Could it be because he's reached a destination that he wanted, and they are no, because when they're when they're at the house or the hotel, they're happy again. They seemed more back to where they wanted to be. Maybe he's hurt because he's not where he wants to be, or he came from where he was.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The fact that he was basically in his version of heaven or paradise or whatever, and pulled himself away to talk to Dan, that it physically hurt him to be there and inject himself into the material world. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. So yeah, I like that. That's my new headcanon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
See, I wouldn't know within like Dark Tower and all that, how that'd play in. Like from all that stuff, but like, I'd assume like from the other spirits, like they're probably feeding on all that energy, and Halloran's not going to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's not that kind of guy.
So it's like, I could see it hurting him to not feed on it, so he has to go back to not, get that craving, so to speak.
Well, it's nice that he has that option to go back, because I think some of the earthbound spirits that are like at the Overlook are I don't think they have that option anymore.
Who knows?
I was kind of torn between the two mists. The fact that in the book, when they were released and passed, the mist was red. But in the movie, it wasn't. It was the same as the Shining mist, but just not the same amount. And I was kind of torn as to if I really didn't like that or I really liked it. I couldn't decide, because it was like, okay, this way it comes. It's the same thing. Basically, they just have a lot more. But I couldn't decide. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was to simplify it for the audience.
Okay.
You start getting into the two different color and versions of sort of soul escape as opposed to steam. You have to dive into an entire conversation about the metaphysics of life and death.
Life force.
Yeah, I mean, and they were like, we got so much to do. We don't have time to get into a metaphysical debate.
Well, it's also like Danny's fly thing. We don't get into that.
Yeah.
Billy and his mother, or himself. How he saved Billy's life.
Yeah, yeah. From
they completely skipped all that out.
Well, they also younged Billy up a lot because he's way older in the books.
Oh yeah. But on the other hand, we got a decent actor, I felt, for Billy.
Oh yeah, I love Billy. I mean, broke my heart in the movie when freaking Snakebite Andy got a hold of him. I think the biggest change that really bothered me was the ending of the book was so satisfying for one reason, because his father's ghost saves him.
Yeah.
That is such a huge thing. It's redemptive for Jack Torrance yet again, and we don't get it again, and that bothers me a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that's my biggest issue with any of the changes they made. I can accept the rest. That bugs me.
I didn't realize that Snakebite Annie was going to be 15 years old. I know in the book she was older, but she appeared, I thought she was going to be in her 20s or 30s.
Yeah, she's
But
32 in the book.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was
yeah,
gonna
but
say,
she's like not that much older than the baseball player. If you think about it, she's 15. He's probably around 12. I mean,
Yeah.
that was unusual. And then having Wolf, that was his name,
Pro Daddy.
Crow,
Yeah.
yeah, Crow Daddy. I don't mind him being Native American, but it was just almost trying too hard. Because the way they did it, he would be someone who would blend in, and if he was walking down the road, he would not normally blend in as well. I don't think. Am I
Yeah,
being?
they kind of removed the front man role. They don't even talk about it. That's what they called him in the book, was the front man, because he was the guy who looked professional, slick, and would go in and sort of do the business stuff that the True Knot needed to function, or to get a hold of a campsite or stuff like that. And yeah, they completely cut that out and just made him sort of, Rose's number two, and that was it.
Right, yeah. Okay. But if what would you want on in the show that they didn't do, and what could you have done without that you think of?
I mean, okay, I get why they made Snakebite Andy like 15 and underage. They wanted us to sympathize with her because the guys that were doing that she was hurting are bad people. So I get that. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. I think like I said, the one change that I really makes me angry is they left out Jack. I mean, he gets to talk to Lloyd, who's sort of Jack in the hotel, but there's no redemption. And I'm a little tired of Jack Torrance getting screwed over. He
Yeah.
redeems himself in The Shining. We don't get it in the movie. He literally saves his son and Avra's life at the end of Doctor Sleep. We don't get that. And I'm like, come on, man. So for me, I mean, that's the one thing. I do love some of the Easter eggs that were thrown in there. When the baseball boy is up the bat, the guy who starts talking about, hey, watch this, that's the original Danny Torrance from Kubrick's The Shining.
Mm,
I
I
love
didn't
that.
notice. I'm going to go look back and watch.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love little things like that. I love some of the little stuff they did, crossing the Kubrick stuff into it. I mean, it worked out pretty well. Except it is a good movie. It's just that ending that I don't like, you know.
The movie on its own is a good movie, and the book on its own is a good book. Is it the book movie for that book? It's what we got. It isn't that bad. It could have been a lot worse. Obviously, look at The Shining and The Shining.
I'm like, yes and no. Um, is there room for somebody else to come across and do a more faithful adaptation? There is. There's plenty of stuff that was in there that you take it all out. You can put stuff directly from the book. Will that make it better than this movie? I don't know.
I'd say they'd go back and redo The Shining before they do that.
Yeah, that's one of those movies, man. It's hard to mess with.
But
It's
like
just
to
really
really go
hard.
back and like make a faithful Doctor Sleep, you get to go back and redo a faithful Shining.
We kind of got that with the miniseries, and honestly, it
But
wasn't.
like a better one that's not on prime
It
time,
wasn't great.
like not an ABC, something that's on like say HBO.
I,
Do
I
it,
I would be fully on board with a Shining miniseries that led into a Doctor Sleep miniseries.
do it on HBO. Give it some actual not ABC daytime TV appearance.
Throw some money at it.
Some real
Yeah,
money at it.
definitely gonna have to throw money at it.
Get some actual good writers at it.
It's
Yeah,
amazing what they can do now
I
with
mean,
graphics and all that.
what was it? Throw the what the hell is that show called? Sorry, I'm trying to remember what it was called. It's one of those HBO shows.
The Dragon show.
No. Um it's kind of Cthulhu based almost.
Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft Country, yes. Like get those guys behind it or someone similar. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I don't think there's any changes that absolutely just icked me out, and because there are some in some movies where I'm just like, that's just wrong. I don't want that in the movie at all.
Hmm.
I didn't have any moments like that. There were some hard moments to watch, particularly Trevor, the baseball boy. His death scene was just gut wrenching. And I mean, maybe it's because I'm a parent. It
Mhm.
really makes it that much more visceral for me. That was gut wrenching. And, I went back and did all the behind the scenes stuff because, like most Stephen King stories, I have it on Blu-ray. So, but that kid, he was having so much fun. And it was to the point where the crew was literally upset because he was being so good at sounding like they were actually hurting him. And then he would just jump up when they said cut and he'd start laughing. And the crew was put off by it. They're like, that kid's too good.
You're freaking me out, kid. You're freaking me
Like, you're
out.
freaking me out, man.
The ending wise of this movie, I almost feel like it was a redemption for the original Shining Kubrick version. They didn't redeem his father, but they redeemed Danny for what his father didn't do. They redeemed the ending by blowing up the hotel, finishing what his father didn't finish from The Shining. But like I said, for me, it's like this movie is the ending does the ending that the original Shining didn't do. We
It
have
does.
Danny literally doing what his father did at the end of the movie. He fights off the ghosts, trying to take over, doing the whole boiler sequence and blowing up the hotel.
I love that he
Doing what
sees Wendy at the end.
Yeah. And he does everything that Kubrick could have done at the original ending but didn't do. So for,
True.
Stephen King, it's like finally giving Stephen King what he wanted. The original ending that The Shining deserved, but never got
Yeah. I just
without
don't
Jack.
I just don't like leaving Jack out again.
Right?
I mean, that ending in the book was just monumental to me. That moment where she's on the edge and she's just about to recover, and then basically his dad's ghost says, "Nah, bitch," and pushes her. I love that moment. I
Yeah.
love that moment. It is very happy. And it's kind of a moment where Danny sees that his dad was redeemed. That his dad was rewarded for doing basically what Danny does in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They also didn't have them staying at the place where the place had burned down at the Overlook because it hadn't burned down. So I don't know where they were camping. I guess it was somewhere in
They
Colorado.
did a campsite near it.
Yeah. But the
Yeah,
fact that they were camping there was kind of the creepy little extension of that, I thought.
Yeah,
in
they
the book.
actually, yeah, they went into it in the books about how some spots were special. and there was a certain energy to the earth where it made the True Knot a little more lively, even without steam, almost like there was an invisible steam coming into them. And this was one of those places, and we know why. It's where the Overlook used to stand. So,
Were there any scenes or dialogue taken straight from the source material, and which did it better?
it's the second half of that question that's giving me issues. There's a bunch of stuff that is word for word, straight out of the book. Doing it better? It almost feels like they're such sort of different takes. It's kind of hard to compare the two. And, I had said earlier, this is a very hard one to judge as an adaptation.
So, like, take like the baseball kid scene, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, who did it better is hard to judge. But at least you're going to get probably less of the offensive names for the characters used.
Yeah, they did cut that out. Like
Yeah.
Barry. He's listed as Barry the Chunk, and he stays the Chunk, which is a good idea. And I'm okay with that change.
The fact that they were word for word, I don't think it matters who did it better. It's just I'm so glad that they did keep to it in a lot of things. There's a lot of things that they veered off on, but those things where they were, the dialogue was kept that way. I think it was perfect. So I don't think that it was done better in the book or it was done better in the show. I'm just glad that it was incorporated the way it was.
This is kind of the Wheel of Time thing for me, because my characters are getting to the same place, but they're getting there in different ways. So I'm not that upset about it. I'm like, it's fine as long as they're getting there. I don't care. They are who they are still. They're just getting to the place they have to go in a different way. So it's really hard for me to compare them and say which is better. They're just different.
How about the spoon scene?
Okay, visually, it was very pleasing to see all those spoons stuck to the ceiling. That was visually very pleasing. It's great reading it, but I will say that I think that scene reads better. It's visually better in the movie. 100%.
Yeah, I was just more bummed that the doctor wasn't there, so then they couldn't tie in and have the knowledge of it to bring it full circle. That was my only problem, but it looked great. I think what they did like that, the way they kept the room 227 lady, she didn't deteriorate anymore. She was still looking the same as she had before, just as creepy. Not
very
as much
zombified.
Yeah. So a lot of it was the
I'm trying to remember, did
makeup.
she leave a trail of slime or not?
Yes, Wendy saw it.
Okay, I thought there was something, but I was.
Yeah,
Eating
Danny told her.
everything, too.
Danny told her not to go in the bathroom. She went in there. She said there was a foul smell, almost like decomposition. And she looked down and she could see footprints that were too small to be a man's, but too large to be a kid's. And there was gunk. And when Dick came over, he told her to clean it up, and he told her, be sure to wear gloves. Don't touch it. I'd say they both do it equally well, just in different ways. That's where I land on that.
Question 3. How did the quality of the cinematography, special effects, sound effects, and music of the film affect the film adaptation of this work?
I was not angry at any of the cinematography. The music was great, particularly when they decide to go to the Overlook, and you get that moment where they're driving, and then the Overlook, shining music hits. You're like, oh, it chills. I think that was beautifully done. Special effects were amazing, particularly Abra and Rose the Hat. I mean, Abra with no eyes is one of the creepiest freaking things I have ever seen in my life. When she's just no eyes at all with the blue hair, and well,
it's creeper than Beetlejuice's stuff with the long nose and.
Well, yeah, that just made me laugh.
The one thing I did notice is when they went back when they went back to the hotel, they didn't follow through with the carpeting and the hallways. They did have like the gold room, and they did have certain things, but a lot of things just appeared to be, I don't want to say forgotten about or not important. Where you're sitting there with that carpeting behind you. In the beginning of the show, they had that carpeting, but the carpeting was nowhere in the second time when they went back.
Well, yeah,
As
I mean, the place was pretty well stripped.
I
Just
can't
about
remember.
everything was gone.
Wallpaper and everything.
I-
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can't remember if this carpet was actually in every single hallway or just the level they were on. In the
There were
original
different. There were different ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
And each like floor had different carpeting.
Yeah. So like the rooms that he went back up on, I'm not sure if those were the same ones, but it should have been the 237 floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember
237 should have the purple and green
Purple and green flooring.
carpet. Yeah. You know what? I used to have it. I don't think I do anymore.
Yeah, they didn't follow that, and that's just a little picky thing of me. But other than that, I thought it was beautiful. I like the way Rose traveled to get to her ping
Oh, yeah.
sky, even though she can't fly. The way she traveled through the sky and things like that, and then the twisting when they were in the shopping Sam's Club or whatever. I thought that
Yeah.
was really good. I did
Yeah,
like
the
that.
whole thing they do when Abra turns the table, which is, one of the things she does in the book, was amazing. The way everything would tilt.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just great. The red rum on the chalkboard, that was amazing. I love that. Most of the blood and gore was pretty on point. Rose sort of degloving her own hand to get it out of Abra's trap was amazing. I mean, that looked gnarly and just made me wince. And I love that.
It was a
I
good
might have issues.
file systems everywhere. That was good. Now the music, I didn't really notice anything. It didn't stand out to me. So if you did hear the Shining music when they were showing the out overlook hotel, it didn't click with me. So nothing stood out with the music or the background or anything like that.
Yeah, it was just after Abra had tossed her phone out the window, and Dan is explaining, there is a place that is going to be dangerous for us, but it's also going to be dangerous for her. And then they start driving up the mountain, and it does a scan over the lake, which is basically the beginning of The Shining. And the music kicks in, and it's just, it's one of those spine chilling moments where you're like, oh yeah, here we go.
It's almost like a 1-for-1 recreation of that too in drone footage.
Yeah, it is. And it was beautifully done. I mean, it was just shot well. So yeah, I think they all around did an awesome job. Special effects, music.
Oh, I had a great score throughout. Casting choices. Just gonna say casting choices.
Yeah, I'm not angry at any of them, honestly. Her name. Let me get her name. Kylie Curran as Abra was really good.
Very good.
I mean, honestly, at that age, she has no business being that good. She was awesome. She also, brought across the creepy and the angry that Abra gets in the book, because she sort of has that Torrance temper.
She's a pretty team too.
Yeah. So we got that from her perfectly. But I mean, the star of this movie, as far as I'm concerned, was absolutely Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat.
You don't think Ian McGregor?
Oh, I think he was great. I think he was an awesome Danny and almost a perfect casting choice. But I mean,
it's like I knew Rebecca Ferguson was familiar. Dune, the new one, as Lady Jessica Atreides.
Yeah, she's Lady Jessica. I could have told you that.
It's like I knew she was familiar when I was looking at her profile here.
She
That's
just
why
came off so dynamic in this movie.
That's why she likes stabbing things.
It fits. Baseball boys included.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her. I liked Ian McGregor. I did
Oh, yeah.
not like the elderly gentleman. I thought they could have gotten an elderly gentleman and not just a sickly looking gentleman.
Grandpa Flick?
Yeah,
Grandpa
he
Flick?
didn't look, he just looked
Oh.
sick. He didn't look like, you know, gruff and the gray hair and everything like that, as I thought personally.
Yeah, I mean, description wise, he does look different in the book, but he's such a dynamic sort of
Oh, yeah,
sight
he's a
on the screen that, you know, just seeing him makes you go, wow.
he's a
The presence.
I was gonna say, is he yeah, he's Adam's figure. He's Lurch.
Yeah, he's Lurch. He
He's
was
a big name.
Lurch in,
Yeah,
in the 80s or
Yeah,
90s. 90s.
Yeah, okay.
80s for sure. I was trying to think if he was all of them or
With,
not. but
Angelica Houston
Yeah.
as
93.
Okay.
Lurch is-
yeah. Okay, so I guess he is older, but he just I saw him as more of like just a sickly tall gentleman, not a grandpa. I don't know why I didn't, but that was just me.
No, yeah, the description in the book is very grandfatherly. He's much smaller, squat. And yeah, he does kind of come off as a, you know, patriarch of a family almost in the book.
Mhm.
We don't get a lot of that in the movie, but like you said, they cut down the true knot
Mhm.
considerably.
Yeah, there's not a lot of in-depth. And then the other one with the crow being not who I thought he was going to be, but he worked great for the way it was done. But if they were
Yeah.
following more to the book, then I would expect something different. But it worked out fine the way it was.
Yeah,
So.
I can agree. Yeah, if they were going to do the whole front man thing, I don't think the look they gave Crow would have worked at all.
Right.
But the fact that they didn't, you know, still make Crow a very scary guy.
Yeah, he's
And-
an incredible actor. The actor, everything I've seen him in personally,
And his death is so satisfying.
isn't it?
Question 5. Did the film capture the themes present in the book, or did it have its own themes like The Shining from Kubrick, which had its own mysterious themes of not really having a theme?
I think it did capture the themes of the book quite well. Focusing on recovery for one. We don't go into it as much in the movie as we do the book. Dan's sort of personal journey into recovery.
He had a chip.
Yeah, and
I don't know how many months on it.
Well, it was 6 years, and he talks about his dad, and you know,
Who was
that's
in the
almost
program, but really wasn't in the program in the book or in the movie.
He went.
He was white knuckling it.
Yeah, he went to a meeting.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know he had gone to
he
a
went
meeting.
to a meeting, and that was it. Is all Jack ended up going to. But that's why Danny says, you know, at one point, my father is standing where I was standing. You know, because he at least went once. So I think it did follow with that. Also with the sort of teacher passing it on to the student, which is a big theme in the book, you know, comes across with Danny and Abra. And especially with interjecting Dick Halloran in it to sort of go, this is the moment.
I think for every 5 important things I've thought, they put 2 or 3 in. So I do think they did keep pretty close to as best as they could. Maybe
Yeah,
they could
this-
have done better, but I was happy with what they did.
Yeah, I think the spirit of the book is there and it does come across.
Yeah.
So
We kept in the revenge theme too at the end with Abra and Rose and all that.
yeah.
Her anger from her stepfather, or not stepfather, but step grandfather. Is that her step grandfather? No. Grandfather Jack. Her anger from that.
Yeah, they cut out the familiar tie completely. So.
Yeah.
But
she
you
keeps
still
the
read.
anger. Yeah.
Yeah, you still read the anger from Abra. She wants her to come back. She wants revenge. I mean, after they kill Crow and she's walking down the road and Rose appears to her, the look on Abra's face is pure rage and just disdain. And it's done really well. So yeah, I think they did keep that aspect of the anger.
I did like the maze a lot.
Ooh, that was good. I
With them in
you
the
know,
maze.
I think the whole box thing was done really well. When I read the book, I was wondering how they were going to do the mental box thing.
Having them in the maze where they
Yeah,
belonged.
I think that actually worked out really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say overall they kept the spirit of the book. You get the same themes.
Do you think so, Max?
Relatively, we have a different sort of redemption theme. Different. Yeah. It's not the same redemption.
But it's a redemption.
It's a redemption.
Well, right. You did wind up the same way as with The Shining, with a mother and a child, and then this one with a mother and a child, both of them losing their father, going through traumatic experiences. A lot of the true in the book broke off. So the true that stick together are truly gone. But the true that are cruising the highways.
Well, there's still the measles that rode off.
Do you think that there is a possibility of more?
In other countries, for sure.
I think there's more here. Well, I think the fact that Abra exists and as strong as she is shows that there may be less people with steam, but when we get people with the shine or whatever, it's going to be a lot stronger.
Mm-hmm.
It's consolidating.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to end up in an X-Men future.
Well, the way they were traveling, they were back in the, I don't want to say Romanians or whatever, the gypsies. The like inside of her expensive camper looked like
the Roma.
Yeah.
That's probably the basis for what he was doing with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are described as very nomadic in that same way. So, yeah, definitely a Roma influence.
Question number 6. Rating the episode, having read the book, how do you rate the film out of 10?
Okay. Solid 7.5 for me. Because like I said, our characters are the same. Abra is Abra. Danny is Danny. Rose is Rose. The knot is smaller, but it's still evil and there and freaking horrific. And, we still get to the same point. We just get there in a different way. But honestly, it's really enjoyable. So
is that a 7.5 in comparison, in contrast with the book, or just as a solo movie?
Having read the book, rating the film.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I've read the book and I still enjoyed the hell out of this, even though there are major changes. So that's why it's, I own the DVD and I own it for a reason, because I went and saw it in the theaters and went, oh my God, I love this movie. And I had read the book before that. So yeah, for me, it's a solid 7.5 as far as an adaptation. If you're going to make major changes to one of King's works, I think this was well executed in those changes. That's why I can rate it that high.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had his fingers all over it. I think he was very involved.
He was definitely involved, but he was asked to be involved, which I think is a big difference between Kubrick and Flanagan. Flanagan immediately went to King and said, "Okay, this is what I was thinking. You know, can you sort of help me find that out, how to get there?" And so King gave him advice. That's why he's credited as a co-writer. He helped him sort of plot it out and figure it out. So, I think the involvement of King was a genius freaking move. And I think it's one of the reasons this movie works so well.
I wonder if he has that as a stipulation also because of losing control of the last one, that every time there is a movie that he is a consultant on it somewhere, because he
No,
wasn't for The Shining. No? Okay.
no, there are certain properties I see him doing that for, but I know for a fact he has a program called the Dollar Baby program.
Okay.
Any film student can buy one of his short stories, the rights, for $1. That's all he charges them, and they can make short films out of his short stories for $1. And I mean, he doesn't get involved. He's like, "Nope, that's all yours. Go knock yourself out." So he's like, "I don't need the money." And these are filmmakers trying to sort of make their bones in the industry. He's like, the least I could do is charge him $1.
Wow. Just to think Shawshank was a short story and how that turned out.
Well, here's the funny thing about Shawshank. Um, the Frank Drabnott, who actually bought the rights, bought it for, I think it was $500. He sent King the check. King never cashed it. What he did was he waited till the movie came out. He watched the movie, decided how much he loved it. He sent it back framed with a note that said, "Just in case you ever need bail money, love, Stephen King."
That is epic. That is
That
epic.
is, that's why Stephen King is so awesome.
Yes. Yeah, that's really good. I'd probably give it a 7 myself for the correlation of the two. There were a few things that were missing, but I really do like the way they kept to it pretty good. And I like the acting. And there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of things.
mean, I don't think I didn't like anybody's acting.
Mhm.
Even some of the harder characters that I thought it would be to like, I actually liked. So
I think I'd go about the same round, 7 out of 10.
okay.
Even if I just put that as like an accuracy at 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
As a standalone film, as if you have never read the book, how would you rate it out of 10?
Honestly, probably a 9. If you're into this genre. If you're not into this genre, there's nothing I can show you you're gonna like. My wife, who is okay with the genre but not a huge fan, she loved the movie when we saw it in the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So she loved it. That's why I would place it where I placed it.
I think I would actually do lower, because I think we'd do 6, because it kept me involved in it because of reading the book and looking for things. Um, it's a great movie. I'm not saying it isn't.
No, I get you.
It would have been a 6. I would have watched it, I would have enjoyed it, but it wouldn't be something that I would
So
rewatch.
slightly above average for you if you hadn't read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I can answer this one easily because I had watched this in theaters without having read either of the books when it first came out. And I gave that probably a 10 out of 10
Nice.
back then. And that was because like the box thing was just like,
yeah.
And so like I said, back then that's what my score would have been. On rewatch, having read the books and taking both into consideration, which is our next part, my rewatch is like it didn't really hold up as well on rewatch after what, 5 years, 6 years, or no,
Yeah, I think something
4
like that.
years, 2019.
19, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, short circuiting here. 4 years.
My God, I don't do math, so I'm an
So-
English guy, not a math guy.
Be 4 years. I feel like even taking it in partially, I feel like it wouldn't be a 10 out of 10 on like impartially, be more like a 9-ish, maybe 8, because it just didn't quite hold up as much as I remembered it holding up to. Taking both into consideration, I'd put it around that 8 mark from like book to movie.
Yeah, I'd go around 8, for both.
Out for the book, I'd put it as a 9. I like the book. I like Stephen King. He could write, the
Yeah, I'd
be,
read his
"Oh."
grocery list. It's fine. We know.
Seriously.
Well, there you have it, folks. We want to thank you for joining us for this Dr. Sleep. Coming soon will be the adaptation of Stephen King's The Body. The movie is better known as Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner. So we'll hope to see you then. In the meantime, please give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. And Lady Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
So don't forget to be awesome.